What's up, folks? This is Acid Roots. I'm going to talk to you guys about Godsmack's 2018 album, their most recent project. So, with this review right here, I'll have basically completed Godsmack's entire discography, which is not something I've done too frequently. And I'm kind of proud of that just because it allows me to kind of focus as a collective on their whole career that they've done and be able to kind of talk some of the stuff that they've actually kind of accomplished. But the thing about this album is it's different. It's not heavy metal, and for the most part, it's not even new metal either. And throughout the 2010s, it seemed like Godsmack was trying to separate themselves from like the new metal and kind of heavy metal sound, post grunge, that sort of stuff. Uh, they kind of did that with the Oracle album, but they do it a lot more on this project. I mean, it has a large promotion. There's 4 singles. It lasted from early 2018 to the first half of 2020. It's only been about 5 months since the promotion on this album wrapped up. And as far as that kind of went, that shows, I mean, that speaks for one thing, just because I normally complain about promotion, but when you take away the promotion from this project, it's not a very complete album. And I feel like some of the reviews were kind of mixed on this project, which kind of leads me to believe, okay, well, what could they possibly be complaining about? The things I had to complain about is the fact that, well, it's encouraging for them to try something new and not just do the same kind of whatever and keep away and I stand alone type songs that they pretty much perfected back in 2000, 2003. But the whole damn thing about it is obviously if they're experimenting now, we have to deal with the experiment, not necessarily the professional completion of them being able to do it. But for what it is, I mean, I don't hate this record. I do feel like it's not one of their strongest, but it's encouraging if you want something different from them. So it's kind of, if you're sick of like the 1998, 2003 Godsmack, this is something refreshing to kind of give you a new taste of them, but it's still not their best record. And I feel like the singles, it's kind of, I mean, all 4 of these songs in the United States rock charts hit #1. So we really enjoyed the singles off this project. But I'm trying to think, I mean, I do feel like some of these can compete with some of Godsmack's best, but they do, it does not seem to be as large as still the stuff from the 90s. But obviously that may be opinionated of me just because the fact that they did hit #1 and people gave a fuck about this project, and it feels as if Godsmack got their swagger back. That's kind of the situation. But we'll talk about the singles so you can kind of get into that more, and then I'll tell you what was wrong with this from my angle and that sort of stuff. So first single was Bulletproof, and this was the new approach to Godsmack. It is not a very heavy song. It kind of almost feels like what Linkin Park was trying to do on their final album, but with like a touch of rock in there just to kind of show that it's still Godsmack. It's a decent little song, but it's not one of my favorite songs by them. Uh, Maybe it's kind of smoky and kind of trying to look for the word here, kind of back and forth. I mean, the approach towards it is just, it's kind of like a pop rock song, I would suppose to say. And obviously, I think enough folks liked it for it to hit #1. But I do think, I don't know, it would have been probably better for them to have approached it like the follow up singles. There are better singles on this project. So the second single is When Legends Rise, and that one has better instrumentation on there, not necessarily pop rock, and kind of comes off as like the hit song. To me, this is the best song on the album. Uh, really appreciated the way that that was handled. It's probably the song I would listen to the most when I eventually purchase it. But yeah, it's good. And then the follow-ups, well, we'll talk about that in a second. But third single, third single was Under Your Scars. So this is kind of like the post-grunge, the kind of power ballad, emotional kind of song that you hear like Metallica and some of those bands do, AC/DC, that type stuff. But they really did not handle it with that much finesse, and it comes off as more too emotional, especially for them when they're typically seen as hard asses and badass, those type vibes. I mean, you would think under the pretext of something different that it works, but the song is just not enjoyable to listen to. It doesn't feel like a rock song. It kind of feels like something like Papa Roach would do or something like that. That completely, it's just not rock at all. So that's kind of the thing with it, and did not hook me in with its vulnerableness. So, but then the fourth single brought it back, and this is the one that came out in that Under Your Scars came out in mid 2019, but this one came out in early 2020. And Unforgettable, it's another Godsmack song. It's what they typically do. It's just another kind of heyday kind of song. Has better production than Bulletproof, but not quite as good as When Legends Rise, but it still hit #1. So I was glad for that. I mean, When Legends Rise and Unforgettable are the two best songs on here, in my opinion. Both had interesting, for them trying their new sound, whatever they were trying to do with this project, they accomplished it with those two songs. But yeah, for me to continue with Bulletproof, it was more pop than I would have wanted. I wanted more guitars in the song and stuff, more drums, that sort of thing. But all right, so now to continue with like the rest of the album, it's it's a little bit shorter. I mean, it's longer than some albums by one song, but there was no deluxe, there was no extra oomph in the project, and they really do not do a swell job of executing like album cuts. The only other songs I felt like that came close to being as good as When Legends Rise and Unforgettable were just Take It to the Edge and then Just One Time. Just One Time is a post grunge kind of feel from Godsmack, which I like when they do post grunge because they don't do it too much. They kind of did it on the Other Side EP that came out back in 2004. But apart from that, they don't really do post grunge that much. Under Your Scars was a weak ballad song, so it's just mostly they're trying to do hard rock, and that's the thing. I understand just because new metal kind of feels younger and less it feels less developed than the metal, the not metal, but hard rock sound. It allows them to kind of broaden their soundscape and get some older fans, and just overall to get in the same field as like AC/DC rather than Korn and those type people. So that's kind of the thing. I mean, Marilyn Manson doesn't have that problem considering that he's industrial, but kind of going off topic. But yeah, so I didn't really have too much of a taste for the hard rock sound that they're trying to accomplish. I mean, when they have the interesting riffs and when the singing is good, that's another complaint I have on here is it feels like it was the same problem I had with the Oracle. It seems like the singing kind of just goes through the motions, and I don't know in terms of how well Sully Erna does on like heavy metal and new metal. He has the singing down pat most of the time. But with this new sort of stuff, there are just songs on here where it's not catchy and it kind of just feels like you're listening to a band or like some background music more so than an actual song that you're trying to sing along with and repeat with them and engage. Even like at a concert, it doesn't feel like very recitable. So that's kind of the thing there. And the riffs just were not that interesting. I mean, there are too many on here, especially after the song Under Your Scars. There's only one song between songs 6 through 11 that caught my interest. And their hard rock sound, they need to keep working on the riffs part because that's kind of the thing. I mean, the problem the problem with hard rock riffs is that it has to be within that soundscape, but then also interesting at the same time. And Godsmack really never had problems with interesting riffs. That's the thing. When you listen to an album like Faceless, Awake, or their 1998 album, or even Four, Most of those records on there did not have problems with catching the riffs. I mean, the band is terrific, and that's kind of the thing. They just were not coming through on this album. And for me to complain about something that's normally such a plus about Godsmack, and it's one of the best things that they do, is kind of disappointing, which is why this album was so underwhelming. I mean, they were trying to do hard rock, but surely they could have come up with some engaging kinds of riffs on here to kind of follow through. They should have just stuck with metal. I mean, if they were going to try something different, rather than, it's one thing to not do new metal anymore, but they should have just stuck with heavy metal and kind of went with that, because the record 4 was really not that terrible. And despite what some people think, it wasn't bad. That was kind of a heavy metal record, and it was the same thing with 1000 HP. Those were both accomplished, but the new sound, and on top of that is like another thing to sit there and notice, the singles, the production is different from the album songs. So when you listen to songs like When Legends Rise, Bulletproof, and Unforgettable compared to the rest of the album, it kind of comes off as like a cheap or tacky Pantera album or something like that, which is not good. And no offense to Pantera, but that's kind of the situation. The singles rise above everything else up here, which leads you to believe that they can handle hard rock. But when you get to the rest of the album, it's proven that it's maybe not such a good idea. I know, obviously, with their next record, they may try to go with this sort of sound again, but I would like to hope for some more interesting riffs. So, yeah, the score I'm going to give this, I'll recommend the songs to you and then I'll tell you. So, out of 11 songs, I wound up liking 5, and so I'll list them for you. Here are the songs I recommend: When Legends Rise, Unforgettable, Take It to the Edge, Just One Time, and Bulletproof. So, those are some of the best ones. You got to check those out. The singles, a lot of them you probably have heard, but that's just kind of some extra stuff on there. Like I was saying, the difference gets separated rather quickly as far as like the singles compared to the rest of the songs on the project. So that's 7 other songs. There are 4 singles, 7 other songs that you have to listen to, and for the most part, it is very underwhelming. So yeah, but I'm gonna give this album a 4 out of 10. I'm gonna give it a 4 just because me liking 5 songs out of 11, that's less than half, and I do feel like they could have done better. I mean, it's probably better than like The Oracle, but it's probably like their second or third weakest album. So it's in the weaker half, but it's not a piece of crap. It just is not a pro or a masterpiece kind of project. So that's kind of what you have to pay attention to. The social score I'll give a 10 though, just because 4 number ones and 2 full years of promotion for this album leads you to believe like, hey, you wouldn't expect for them to do that good a job for that. Especially considering that most people, their standard complaint is that they can never quite get back to where they were in 98 and 2004. But they did it. I mean, they did it in terms of promotion, and this is the fact that most everything else on this project, besides the songs you hear on the radio, don't really do it. So that's kind of the thing. But so yeah, that's the complaint. Just refer back to it. Listen to Godsmack. You've got everything they did is on the Acid Roots channel now. So enjoy that. I might do like an entire discography review, but I don't know. Don't hold your breath. But if you do see it, it'll be like a nice bonus.